Chapter 6 asks us the question, has the emphasis of the individual over the community, our selfish traits over our altruistic ones, imperiled both the market's effectiveness in determining value and ultimately society's values? Mark argues for inclusive capitalism, one which lives by the golden rule, a utilitarianism that identifies the value of social as well as economic capital. Or as Tony Atkinson argues, quote, efficiency is only valuable when it makes society better off, unquote. Such altruism and solidarity are demonstrated most recently by our best behaviors during COVID-19, the many artists who made masks and designers who produced PPE and distributed it, for example. And he further insists that economics has values. The chapter has three related themes. First, the creep of commodification through all aspects of contemporary life, or as Paul Mason states, channeling Andy Warhol, quote, the whole of society is becoming a factory, unquote. Secondly, the move towards and then away from democratic market economies, reliance on a trinity of distributive justice, social equity, and intergenerational equity, that is, as Branko Milanovic proposes, meritocratic capitalism. So these three factors drive growth and maximize social well-being, and studies cited indicate higher GDP in countries that maintain the social contract, which drives innovation because wealth circulates, a greater number of individuals are educated, contributing talent to innovation and the market. The current erosion of this social contract leads to a reversion to societies that celebrate wealth over other values, celebrity culture, in fact, and decades of neoliberal governments, as well as technology innovation and globalization, are driving these trends. Thirdly, both the tendency to commodify all aspects of human life and the abandonment of the social contract are driven by, and I quote, unchecked market fundamentalism, which devours the social capital essential for the long-term dynamism of capitalism itself, unquote. So market fundamentalism believes that the market is always right and should not be mediated, and that economic decisions are value-free. It's particularly dangerous when it captures the state. So what I thought were the most salient and perhaps most controversial issues were, firstly, commodification. The concept of value has changed from the intrinsic value of a good or service to its exchange value or price on the market. Hence, goods and services that are not on the market are not valued. Capital is driven to move the social sphere into the market to create market value. It's a tautology. And Mark argues that being in a market can change the character of a good and the social practices that it governs. And he gave great examples in the ways that these can corrode intrinsic motivations. Blood donations in the US are paid for, in England not, and there's no supply crisis in England. My first question is not the relentless commodification of the social sphere inevitable, given the drive for capitalism to find new markets? How do we think of counterforces and other ways of organizing different kinds of service provision, perhaps co-op platforms and other means, because we do need to socialize certain components of human life. Secondly, returning to the social contract, you address the need for a state that governs the social sphere and can mediate the economy when needed. But what should the forces of reform be within corporations? I'm a member of the Canadian Centre for the Purpose of the Corporation. Our data shows that Canadians want to see large corporations act to make the world better. Is there a role for stakeholder capitalism? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Avery. Mark, 5 minutes, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much. So maybe I'll start on it's hard to keep the two together, so I'll try and separate but start organizing comments around money. And the first is that the history of money, public or private, is one of debasement over time. There's the incentive both of the authorities, whether it's in Roman times, Henry VIII, all the way down through, is ultimately to take advantage of some form of inflation, some form of debasement to in extremis. And it's very much the case in the history of private money as well. And one of the examples I use in that is one of the more solid versions of private money, which is the Bank of Amsterdam, which is effectively, and I draw the analogy, it's more or less, I think, accurate, which was a 17th century stablecoin. It lasts for a while, but ultimately succumbs to the temptation of running a mismatch and starting to lend and not being 100% back, and then ends up with a run. The solution to that problem, to the first, I would just say I agree. I agree, right? Which is that there are a series of it's the difference between the sort of big society type approach, if you will, and different modes of social provision, and undervaluing, if I not to overuse the term, the experience of providing and the contagious effect of the provision of social goods, of volunteerism, of other aspects. On stakeholder capitalism, yeah, I agree. I think we'll probably have a chance to touch on that in more detail as we get to a later chapter of the book, which goes through purpose-driven corporations. But I am minded in that direction. Then the challenge, as you know, with your work, is how do you structure that so there's discipline to it, and there's the dynamism that we need from our companies in parallel with the other weighting of stakeholders in a way that aligns them.